Okay, it looks like everybody who was calling in has got audio now. Do you see anybody else on calling in, Laurence, before I call this to order?
Not at the moment.
Okay, then let's go ahead and call the meeting to order at 4:01, 10:01 Hawaii time. Sorry, everyone, I'm in DC. So good morning. We're calling the meeting to order at 10:01 a.m. on Tuesday, October 15th, 2024. We'd like to start by asking for a roll call.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Chair Kalipi, and also if you could state if there's somebody else in the room with you.
Present, and I'm the only one in the room.
Vice Chair Miyashiro.
Present. I'm also the only one in the room.
Director Bruce.
Here, I'm at the NELHA board.
Director Adams.
Just me and my shadow.
Director Suji. Director Sal.
Present, conference room.
Director Hilton.
Present, just myself here.
Director Bossert. I do see him. I think you're on mute.
Oops, sorry. Present, just myself.
Director Kim. And Director Glick for DBED.
He's just signing in. There he is.
Looks like Mark Glick might be just signing in right now. Director Glick, if you could let us know if anyone's in the room with you.
I am here, even though you can't see me.
There, we got you.
Thank you. So I think that's it for the directors. We'll let you know if someone else signs in. We do have some guests in the room here. I'll start first with staff though, and then we'll proceed with guests in the room and guests online. I'm Laurence Bombardier. I'm Deputy Director, filling in as Executive Director.
Faustine Edge, Administrative Assistant with NELHA, Haleako.
Alex Leonard, Chief Projects Officer, NELHA.
Pete Olson, Chief Operations and Science Officer.
And online, we have more staff. Ray, could you please start?
Hi, my name is Ray. I'm the Marketing and Leasing Assistant Specialist here for NELHA. Also, Jennifer and Sherry, they're in their own cubicles, but their mic doesn't work, so just give me a heads up.
Okay, thank you. Pam, does your mic work?
Hi, good morning. Yes, this is Pam. I'm in the lab by myself.
Okay. Director Kim, I think, just joined us. Could you please present yourself and let us know if you're alone in your room?
Yes, I'm here by myself.
Thank you. So I think that was it for directors and
Director Suji.
Oh,
is signing in.
Okay, Director Suji signing in. While he does that, we have two guests in the room here. Would you kind of?
Good morning. I'm Gerald Castleton, Indo-Pacific Sea Farms.
You might be having trouble seeing him and our next guest because the camera's not pointing that way, but you'll be able to hear the audio. And we have another guest.
Dave Antom, member of the public.
There they are. Online, we have a couple guests as well. Mark Ladow. Okay, maybe his mic isn't working, and I see somebody that's labeled T Fee.
Tom Fee.
Oh, Tom Fee. Tom, can you let us know if, who you're with, please? Okay, his mic might not be working, but Tom Fee is he's a subcontractor and is working on our master plan for NELHA.
HHF Consultants.
Yeah, yes, HHF Consultants.
And then Director
Have I
Suji.
missed anybody? Oh, Director Suji, can you please let us know if you have anybody in your room with you?
No, I'm here by myself. Thank you.
Thank you. That's it, Chair.
I think we have one more person, Sherry O.
Her mic doesn't work.
Her
Oh,
mic doesn't,
okay.
so
Okay.
Ray mentioned her mic and Jennifer's mics do not work.
Oh, okay. Got it. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. And welcome to this morning's meeting. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the August 27 to 2024 NELHA Board of Director meeting minutes. Can we please have a motion?
I'll move.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Okay, hearing none. Are there any objections to approving the motion to approve the minutes of the August 22nd, 2024 Board of Directors meeting minutes? Okay, hearing none, the motion is hereby approved. The second item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the September 3rd, 2024 Board of Directors, NELHA Board of Directors meeting. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Director Hilton. Can we please have a second?
Second.
Thank you.
Director seconded.
Thank you. Is there any discussion about the minutes from September 3rd? Okay. Then let's call for the vote. Are there any objections to approving the motion to approve the September 3rd, 2024 minutes? Okay, hearing none, the motion is hereby approved. The next item, go ahead.
Sorry, Chair, I'm sorry, I forgot somebody who's online, Delaney Prescott Tate, who's filling in for John Cole. My apologies.
Good morning, Delaney Prescott Tate, John's next door office neighbor. Nice to meet you all.
Thank you. Sorry
Nice
about
to
that.
meet you. Sorry about that, Delaney. Thank you very much for joining us. I apologize. That was my bad too. I waved at you when we first all got on.
Yes.
Sorry. Okay. The next item we have on the agenda is for public testimony. Please limit any testimony to 5 minutes. We'll start with anyone in the conference room before moving to anyone online. Is there anyone in the conference room who would like to provide testimony?
Nobody here. Thank you.
Okay. Is there anyone online who would like to provide testimony? Okay, I'm not seeing any hands raised or anyone unmuting their mic. So we will move on to the next agenda item. Okay. We don't have any old business. There's no old business or new business for today's agenda. The next item on the agenda is the financial report. Laurence, could you please present on this item?
Yes, just a moment. I'll share my screen. Yes. And we have another guest who just joined us. He's signing in as we speak. And in a moment, will let us know his name.
I'm Jeff Stemford, National Park Service. I'm Environmental Protection Specialist at Cloacona National Historical Park.
Thank you. All right, financial report. We haven't had one in a couple of meetings, in part because of the changes, but also in part because the we had some staff shortages to get this together, and we are doing meetings every month now. So the intention is that we will probably be presenting these financials every other month as we used to. So next month, there probably won't be a financial report. But the two graphs that you're seeing on the screen right now, the gray line is fiscal year 2025, which just started June and July, compared to the last 5 years, going back to fiscal year 2000. And we are pretty much in line. This financial report is going to be for the first 2 months of the fiscal year, so July and August. And we are very much in line with both on the revenue side and the expenditure side. There are a few small differences, and I will go through that now. On the revenue side, that was approximately $726,000 for those 2 months, July and August. That represents a decrease of about $54,000 over the same period last year. Overall, the seawater system is actually up, and that's mainly due to an increase in some seawater usage as well as higher electrical prices. The rent, on the other hand, decreased compared to the last fiscal year. The overall decrease was about $52,000, and that's primarily due to a reduction in space due to some short-term projects in the research campus that have left. And we've also lost one longer-term space in the tech park. There was also some unpaid rent. So you're looking at actuals here. These and percent rent-wise, there's a difference, but that's because we had a late percent rent that was paid, and normally it's paid in the spring. The labor services were down. And again, these are cyclical. They're best viewed over a 6-month period. So I don't think that's cause for concern. The reimbursements for electrical are down, and that's a straight reimbursement, and it really just depends on what the usage is from the companies. And so that's pretty much it in summary on the revenue. So a little bit down, but not by a whole lot. Are there any questions on the revenue before I go to expenditures?
Just a comment on page 1 on the notes. I think it's just a typo. But labor services are down. So these services are cyclical and best viewed over Earth as 6 months. So I think maybe Earth should be out of there.
Yes.
I thought this was a new concept. I got excited here.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing. Yes, thank you for pointing that out.
Right.
We'll change that. Any other comments? Okay, on the expenditure side, total expenses for the first 2 months were about $660,000, pretty much flat compared to last year. So that means that our burn rate on a monthly basis, is about $330,000. That's our monthly burn rate. The seawater system expenditures were down by $70,000. And that's in large part due to reduced personnel costs, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. The tenant utilities were up. That's a pass-through cost. The NELHA utilities increased by a small amount, pretty much insignificant, just a couple $1,000s. And the park ground maintenance decreased, but then on the other hand, the beach park maintenance increased. So all of that basically makes for a flat expenditure graph. Our administrative expenses were up in part due to the union mandated salary increases that took place in July. Are there any questions on the expenditure side? Okay, I will proceed to the special fund summary. So our beginning balance, of course, was 0 because that's the start of the fiscal year. A cash transfer was made of $500,000, followed by a cash balance that we expect to transfer in October. So it's normal to do this in 2 phases. just in case they're, well, to allow for end of year activities to take place and to be done on the accounting side. So we have included the cash balance transfer that will be happening at the end of this month, so that the board can have an idea of what the true special fund balance is. Even though it's an estimate, it's pretty close to what it will be. So we're close to about $1 million, so 987,000 is in the special fund. So at a burn rate of 300,000, I think we've got a few months in there. On the arrears, I do have an update as of this morning. So what's posted here was the data as of August 31. We did have some significant arrears. About 84% was from Cyanotech and Ocean Era. We work with them closely, and I'm happy to say that as of this morning, Cyanotech's arrears have been paid in full, as has Ocean Era. So as of this morning, October 15, we only have $19,000 in arrears, and those are basically arrears from 1 month back. So I think we're doing good on that end. Are there any other questions or any questions at this point? And if there are not, that concludes the financial report.
Thank you. At this time, we need to do decision-making on the financial report. So could we please have a motion to approve the financial report?
I'll move.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Opening up for discussion. Does anyone have any questions or matters for discussion? Okay. Hearing none, we'll move to the vote. Does anyone have any objections to approving the financial report? Okay, hearing none, the motion is for the financial report from July to August 2024 is hereby approved. Okay, next on the agenda is an informal presentation on the Hatch Accelerator, Venture Builder, and Ocean Foundry programs. And Laurence, I'll turn it over to you.
And, I don't think Wayne has joined.
Okay.
He was confirmed as of last week. He is in Europe, so this would be 10 o'clock at night, his time. And I'm afraid he hasn't joined us, so perhaps we can go to the next presentation.
Sure, we can punt. The next item on our agenda is an informal presentation by the NELHA staff on the state of the offshore corridor pipelines. And for that, Laurence, I'll pass to you to identify who on the staff is presenting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I'm going to do what I did last time. We had such a presentation. So, and I will give just a quick summary. So on, I think it was August 27, we had a informational presentation that had to do with an overview and a summary in the state of onshore distribution, seawater distribution system. And that was presented by Keith Olson, and that was pretty much half of the picture. So now we're presenting you with the other half of the picture, mostly because it hasn't been brought to the board in some time. And so in light of master planning and EIS, it made sense to brief the board on this. And so the other half is offshore corridor. There are two sets. The takeaway is that there are going to be two sets of pipelines. Some pipelines that have to do with an older tenant, Ocean Farms, that went bankrupt and left pipelines in the water. Another set, the second set of pipelines, has to do with the NELHA installed pipelines. So this is going to be presented by Alex Leonard. Alex Leonard is our Special Projects Officer. What I do want to point out is that since Jan War and Tony Mitchell left, a lot of institutional knowledge, left with them. And so Alex has been kind enough to take on some of the activity and to consolidate some of the information that that has been collected over time and that is relevant at this point going forward. So the basics, again, this is a valuable asset. It's the other half of that valuable asset we talked about in August. Unique, one of a kind, again, lifeblood of the park. But important to note that NELHA has conducted significant work offshore over the years, and Alex will talk a little bit about that. He'll also talk about what needs to still happen. There's a lot that still needs to happen. And there are challenges, obviously, infrastructure that is either very deep or very hard access because it's in rough water near shore. That's just a basic challenge that we have to work with every day. All marine work is extremely costly. So that's the other big challenge with maintaining these systems offshore. And of course, this is also aging infrastructure at this point because we're looking at 20 and 30-year systems. So with that, I'll let Alex share his screen and give you a little bit of an idea of what the system is like offshore.
Thank you, Laurence. Laurence pointed out that NELHA has done a lot of work in the past on this, but there's still a lot of work to be done. And I hope you understand after my presentation what that looks like. NELHA's seawater pipeline inventory is the best of its kind in the world. The 55-inch deep seawater line is the longest, the deepest of its kind in the world. Nothing comes even close. International engineering awards were given for its design and its installation, and we're very proud of it. The intake system is NELHA's most significant and most valuable asset. Without it, we would not be here, that we would not have justification for being here. It allows us to pump up to, well, we're permitted to pump up to 183 million gallons per day. The combined capacities of our intake lines are just about a little bit below that, about 140 million gallons per day. Our installed pump capacity is much less than that, however. And these days, we're currently pumping at about 20 million gallons per day. Our peak previously in the past, just prior to COVID, was about 30 million gallons per day. The state has spent about $100 million over the years, or the last 30 years, putting these pipelines and the land-based distribution system in place. If we were to replace only the deep seawater intakes, in today's dollars, the current estimate is about $40 million to do that work. So this is expensive. This is expensive stuff, and we really need to protect it. Laurence alluded to another set of pipelines, those belonging to a now defunct tenant, Ocean Farms Hawaii, who installed these back in the late 90s, but went bankrupt, leaving NELHA holding the bag. The Ocean Farms pipelines, there's 6 of them. They range in depth all the way down to 2,000 feet. And there's a lot of them in there, and they're a mess, quite frankly. And you'll see why in a moment.
And they're in their general area,
yeah.
General blue area.
So when we talk about maintaining our seawater pipelines, we have 2 ways of gathering information. Because they are out of sight, we need to get underwater to look at them. We can get to within scuba zone. We obviously can use divers, but bear in mind that NELHA does not have their own diving staff. We haven't had our own. The state has not allowed us to have our own diving staff for quite a number of years. So all of this has to be subcontracted work. The deep portions of the pipeline in the past have always been surveyed by manned submersible. Hawaii Undersea Research Laboratory, we had an excellent relationship with them going back over the years. This is Jan Moore's baby. He was really excited to be involved in this stuff. Unfortunately, Hurl has decommissioned the KOK, the support ship that was deploying the Pisces 5 submersible. And so that program is no longer available to us as of a few years ago. And so right now, we have not got a plan yet in place for how we're going to survey the state of the deep sea pipelines. And that's a very important message for you to take home. Kinds of information that we get that is relevant to tenants, for example. There's been a lot of discussion amongst the larval working group about the possible need to clean the intake screens. We know that our infrastructure is aging, and these pictures were taken back in 2016. Let me tell you that it no longer looks like this. All of those metal stands that you see holding those pipes up since 2016 have been broken down into rubble. And there's literally nothing holding up the pipeline that you see on the bottom right.
Which station is that, Alex?
This is the cow pump station. The pipe on the left is the 24-inch, and the pipe on the right is the deep sea 18 pipeline. Thanks for asking. What happens when a pipe breaks free from the bottom? If polyethylene is positively buoyant in seawater, but only just about. If a pipeline breaks in its midspan, it'll float up towards the surface if it's unweighted. But there it will lie tethered to the bottom typically by the other end. And in the currents around Keahole Point, it'll tend to bob up and down. And so we may get a sighting of a pipeline, run out there in a boat an hour later or 2 hours later, and the pipe will have disappeared, sometimes for days or weeks on end, only to pop up a quarter of a mile away and stay at the surface for just a few minutes. So you can imagine it's very difficult, very challenging to grab hold of these sometimes. We've had, of the ocean farms, the major breakaways that we had have been with the ocean farms Hawaii pipelines that were ballasted down using an old method that is no longer used. The span straps holding the weights to that pipeline started rotting away, especially in the shallow sections. And we've lost about 2,000 feet of them. NELHA has spent over $500,000 recovering those sections already. I had to travel to Maui a few years ago to pull a piece out that had been floating off between Maui and Lanai for a few weeks. And we still have 22,500 feet of those pipes under the water right now that need to be recovered. It's only a matter of time before more float up, and they do pose a threat to life and property. Most concerning to me is the state of the NELHA 18 and 24 deep sea water pipelines. Up until just recently, those were thought to be relatively stable. However, that is no longer the case, and they need to come out of the water, and we're working in real time to make that happen. It's just some of the expenses that have accrued over the years relating to the ocean farms Hawaii pipelines. And that was just to illustrate the way pipes can disappear and reappear, making it challenged to find them, to recover them. So regarding the ocean farms pipelines, how hard can it be to just pull them out? Turns out that it's not easy. They're tangled, they're kinked, they're wrapped around each other. They move around with the currents. And so it's been very challenging for us to even come up with a plan to resolve this situation. So, first we realized we need to figure out where they are and what conformation they're lying in on the bottom of the ocean, who's on top of whom, in order to allow us to figure out how to sequence the removal if we were to do that. We've even considered weighting them down and abandoning them in place. So what happened a few years ago is Greg Barber requested $500,000 from the legislature to study this problem and come up with a plan. We conducted an offshore underwater ROV survey to detail the state of the condition of the pipelines. And this is the result of that effort. So we now have a detailed picture of where they are and the features associated with them, and which one is on top. As you can see, the tangle in the middle of your picture there. It dictates the order, the sequence in which the pipes would have to be recovered. And so what we were then did was we passed this information on to McIverson Engineering, who have now prepared a plan set and specifications for us to go out to bid to hire a contractor to take all those pipelines out of the water. That's where we sit at the moment. We don't have the money to do this. Put together this timeline as much to inform myself of kind of the history of things, because as Ross said, a lot of this history and knowledge was in Jan Moore's head, and we lost that when he retired. But you'll see that over the years we've done a lot of inspections on the pipelines and have responded to them. So, for example, the 40-inch deep seawater line in the North System, there was an inspection back in 2008 that revealed that there was some failure in some of the hold downs and a breakage in the pipe. That was then repaired subsequently in 2013. However, one take home that I see is that in 2016, which is our last major survey, where we had surveyed both deep and shallow, the orange indicates there were issues that were reported with a given pipeline that need to be addressed. Typically, in most of these cases, that's the replacement of zinc anodes, sacrificial anodes, without which metal hardware, steel hardware that holds the pipes down or holds them to their ballasting systems will rot. Well, in the intervening time, those have failed, as I indicated, and now we're dealing with pipes that need to be taken out of the water that otherwise wouldn't have had to be taken out of the water had those repairs been made earlier. Ballpark survey cost estimates. This is important. As I said, we don't have a plan, right? We haven't actually come up with a plan yet of how to survey the deep portions of the pipelines. It's most likely going to have to be an ROV work at this point. How much that's going to cost? This is my best guess based on the information that I have available to me right now. But I allow for the fact that it could get significantly more expensive than this, especially if we need to do some manipulative work, which we would typically have done with a sub in order to, for example, test the strength of existing hardware or state of hardware. So this is kind of a wrap-up picture for you. Our priorities as we see them. We really believe that we need to bring in a staff member specifically to oversee the seawater system. We need to carry on with the surveys, both shallow and deep. The last time we did this was 2016. It's time to do it again. The 18 and 24-inch Kau pipelines need to come out of the water. There's a solicitation on the street right now. I'm expecting bids within the next 10 days on that. My guess is that it's going to be expensive, but we'll see. We're talking about cleaning the seawater intake strainers. That's something that we can do with a subcontractor. Replacing the zincs is a priority for the shallow water pipelines, especially. Removing the old abandoned NELHA pipelines for the shoreline. This is something that we've been asked by members of the public to take care of. Basically, clean up our act around here, get stuff out off the beach that doesn't need to be on the beach, and I totally support that. And then the ocean farms Hawaii pipelines. These are a tremendous risk at present for NELHA. If somebody were to crash into one of those in a boat in the dark, somebody could lose their life. So we've already secured 3 of the pipelines to the reef as a temporary measure. We've surveyed those pipelines and developed a scope of work. We're all but ready to go out to bid for that, to remove and abandon all 6 pipelines, but it's going to be very expensive. This is another important take-home message. None of this work is currently budgeted. And my best guess is that this is what we need. I'd be happy to talk with individuals about the breakdown of this number. I can't break it down here because I don't want to jeopardize any of the active bidding or near future bidding activities that we have, at present. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Alex. So on some of these items, we're basically teeing it up, right? So specifically the ocean farms, that's something that Greg had sought funding for, and obtained the funding to come up with a plan to remove those, with the expectation had always been that we would go back once we knew how we would plan on doing this and what the approximate cost would be, so that we could get additional funds to do this. So we are teeing that up. We are out for an IFB, for the removal of the Ka'u NELHA pipeline, part that poses a risk. We already, under emergency procurement, removed the nearshore and riskier parts. But we're wanting to remove some other parts that we feel ought to be addressed. So some of this we're teeing up, gathering the information, and this is the point of this. This presentation is to give the board a summary of where we're at. Are there any questions? Yes.
I know on your presentation you said that NELHA is kind of on the hook for all the abandoned pipelines. Does DLNR have any interest in helping NELHA with this?
In the past, no.
In the future, no also?
Maybe with some help from the board.
Okay.
Do we have a
Yes,
timeline?
why? Sorry.
Sorry, I thought you were done, Nate. My apologies. Go ahead.
Oh, I just, because I'm new, in the past, why has DLNR not wanted to assist NELHA in this issue? Because it is a public resource.
Yeah, the assumption is that NELHA is the landlord and the caretaker of this place, and was the landlord when they were initially put in, and so the responsibility has historically been viewed as rolling downhill straight onto us.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
NELHA has generally been able to move fast. We move fast on everything.
Yeah, sure, sure.
And so,
But given the scope of this project and that it interferes with travel lanes,
yeah,
is that something that we could revisit with DLNR?
Oh, sir, I'm Russell Tsuji. I'm from DLNR. What is your question specifically? Because NELHA, I'm not sure if you're familiar with NELHA. It's a agency attached to DBED, not DLNR. It has been given from the legislature extraordinary powers to contract, to lease lands, and do things that are not otherwise available to other state agencies holding public trust lands from DLNR. And so there's kind of been DLNR basically said, from a land management or submerged land management perspective, you have to comply with all the regulatory requirements, and I believe they have. They have a conservation district use permit for the pipelines. They should have one. And any kind of project that they would want to pursue in the ocean, I would assume they have been checking with the Office of Conservation and Coastal Lands, together with the Division of Aquatic Resources, for any impacts to the shoreline area. But if you're talking about the funding or anything like that, the department, like DBED and like NELHA, if it has a project that it must pursue, it will be going through right now, as we all are getting ready for the upcoming legislative session, putting its project down and submitting its capital improvement project. But we're not involved with that because NELHA is attached to Department of Business and Economic Development and Tourism for a particular reason, not the DLN. So they would have to go through DBED to get their budget submitted to the governor and Budget and Finance for consideration. But
Thanks,
as far as working with DLNR, it certainly has to because of the regulatory requirements in the ocean, and I'm sure NELHA has been doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Tsuji. So in terms of question, I mean, thank you for the update. As a new chair who has not yet been briefed on this, I can say that, looking at the history, I have a lot of questions as to why it got to this state, but we can save that for now. I think the issue in rather than looking back is in the assessment of the staff, Alex, in those three categories that you provided, will the staff be able to prioritize what immediate actions need to be taken and what the priorities are for the purposes of us having to figure out how to go get that funding?
Yes, I think so. But in my estimation, all of the items that were on that list are actually high items, highly prioritized items, and some of them are critical.
Okay, so notwithstanding that and understanding that in the way my understanding of the legislative process, obviously we can ask for the amounts that are required, but in the event that we are asked to phase this, I think it's going to be important for the team to be able to make those recommendations. Also,
Yes.
unless it is impossible. If you're telling me it all must happen at the same time, not in parallel or in sequence, and that we have the capacity and the equipment to do that and be able to expend funds, then that's a different answer, right? The second question I have is, notwithstanding that Hurl was stopped a few years ago, has there been any discussions with SOEST, School of Ocean, Earth Science and Technology, about the new capacities they have for being able to look at the ocean floor?
Not to the best of my knowledge.
So we are working with a team to do some exploration for freshwater off the coast.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that would be the same team, but we can double check.
No, it's a different team.
So-
I mean, I'm aware that Hurl are now doing all of their work with a work class ROV. And so I presume they would make a good partner for this, but we have not yet had any actual discussions with them as to what that would look like.
Also, Chair, on your first question, to some extent, there's sort of a massive, and maybe that's a scary word, but a massive recapitalization effort that probably needs to be considered. And this is why we're looking at all the different aspects, both onshore, offshore, and some decisions have to be made as to what takes priority. I mean, we can't just go in to the legislature and say, oh, we need, another 40 million here. That I don't think that would be viewed very well. So to some extent, we're taking stock. At this point, I know I'm not ready. I don't think our staff is ready to prioritize things. But it is something that we will be putting some thought into and, bringing it to the board. And when we do, I think the board will have seen all this background information and know where we're coming from. That's
Okay,
my hope.
Vice Chair Misher, I see you. I just want to ask one more thing. Given the timing of where we currently are in the legislative cycle and what is required to go through the state process for funds to be requested going through DBED, funds requested going through the governor's package, and then being presented, am I understanding that since we're at this late date when we're being briefed, that you would be looking at the next cycle, not the upcoming cycle?
That is correct. We understand that all of the forms are going in, they're coming in fast and furious. Jennifer knows that, who's online. So we are fully aware that now is the time to make all the requests, but we just don't have the capacity right now to do that and to do it in a way that we're going to be able to back up why, the amounts that we're asking and exactly why. There just isn't that capacity right now. And that's the reality. If we can get help, then maybe we can start making these requests immediately, but I don't see how we can do that right now.
Okay, thank you. Vice Chairman Cheryl.
Sorry, what is your all-in CIP, anticipated CIP request at this point?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
How much are we anticipating going to the legislature for CIP? Is it just the 40 or is it 40 plus what was presented at the last meeting?
At this point, we are not making any requests for CIP for this upcoming legislative session. Because we're not in a position to prioritize items. And it really does make sense for us to complete the master plan, have the new leadership on board in order for us to do that. As it is, I can say that I personally can't do that work on top of keeping the boat afloat. And I'll be giving a summary of all of our activities. There's a lot of work that has been doing. The staff is spread very thin. And just getting into the legislative requests is just not something we have the capacity for at the moment.
Okay. It feels like this kind of came out of the blue. It hasn't been every meeting where we're talking about, you know, potential capital budgeting costs and ongoing maintenance costs. I would like to encourage everyone to see how we could probably incorporate this with a little bit more board governance. So potentially integrating this into the executive director's update. I feel like we've heard everything is fine, everything's ongoing. But given the briefings on these last two meetings, it feels like this didn't just happen. So we probably would like and appreciate and strongly encourage a little bit more ongoing disclosure.
And we're happy to do that.
Do you have any type of proposed methodology here? I do know when you're looking at regular commercially viable properties, you know, they reserve for long-term capital replacement type investments, as well as ongoing. And I don't know if our expenditures are more operational or if we are reserving for these kind of upcoming budgeted type capital expenditures. Or if it's one of those things that we look for CIP funding for, because I feel like it might be, if we don't go in for CIP this year, we at least start socializing our funding needs.
Yeah, I agree. I think socializing for the following year in order to be more effective in obtaining the funds would be a better strategy than going right now with the information that we have on hand. Yeah, as far as reserving for replacement costs, we touched on that a little bit at 2 meetings ago. That would affect the seawater cost or price, and in turn affects all of the clients that are here. When you're talking about large capitalization is what we've been talking about between the onshore and offshore, that the cost effect is going to be negatively affect the companies that are here that are basically on a tight budget as far as their seawater. And so we have to, I think, be very careful if we're putting funds aside out of the seawater revenues. That also has to be done carefully with a proper analysis and how it might affect the companies.
I agree that there is considering the state has looked at NELHA as a facility to support innovation and the ocean economy. But I feel like we need to be more integrated, right? It's not just we're self-sufficient, everything's all encompassing, but then on the other side, we do rely on state support. And it does sound like if it's infrastructure, there might be an ongoing component as well that we consider when we are making decisions, especially if there is a policy nexus, right? And a given level of state support.
Yes, I agree. As we move and keep working towards NELHA 2.0, that is definitely a component that perhaps wasn't included in the past, but that we definitely need to add and make sure it's covered going forward.
Are there any other questions from other board members?
I have a question. Can any of this be considered, you were used the word critical, initiating requests for some emergency funding?
So all the pipeline removals that we've done so far have been funded through emergency procurement methods, just because they had to happen in the short time span. I'm not sure that the emergency procurement solves the problem though, because those funds have always come out of our special fund anyway. So it's just, it just shortcuts the procurement process itself, doesn't address the source of funding.
You were asking perhaps if there was a source of emergency
Is there
funding elsewhere
is there
that could
another
be tapped
vehicle that we
into.
could use? You know, if we don't have the resources to submit anything this year, at least get it on the radar screen with the ledge that are going to be coming next year for significant funding, but we would like to possibly get some emergency funding this year to get some of these critical things taken care of. I'm just wondering if there's a vehicle to do that.
So the plan had always been when we started working up the Ocean Farms Hawaii Pipeline Recovery Project, the plan was always going to be that Greg Barber was going to take this legislature back, starting back this last September, and have exactly those kinds of discussions with the legislature. But since his departure, that's kind of had to sit on the side. So those discussions have not yet been had.
So we can look into it and see if there is a vehicle though. I'm not aware of any right now, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
One to me, since I've got some latitude, I guess. But I'd like to get it on the radar screen this year for the ledge, so there's no surprises next year. That maybe there might be somebody or someone's that say, you know, here's some initial funds to get some of these things going. And maybe it's the resources to help you put all this stuff together to submit next year. You don't have the bandwidth this year.
This is Greg. Just a comment and a question. You know, I'm from the private sector, so I think maybe a little differently, but in the business world, normally you'd have a reserve and so the tenants would pay. Now, basically what I'm hearing is we're subsidizing the tenants and, you know, they won't like rent increases, which is understandable. But then if I were the state, I'd think, okay, if we're going to pay this money again, what is the benefit to the state? And we've discussed this at prior meetings, you know, what is the economic benefit of NELHA to the state of Hawaii as a whole? And we haven't really fully discussed that, but I think there's a lot of potential. But I think from what I've seen, NELHA is primarily a landlord. And so, you know, maybe we need to, if we go in for money, we have to think about, you know, what is the vision of NELHA, right? Which kind of leads to the new executive director. But, you know, we've been around for a long time, so there should be something. But my question is, if we don't do this, what happens? Like if we don't do anything this year, are we in breach of our leases? I mean, I don't really understand the consequences of this problem. So maybe you can shed some light on that.
I think we're gonna have to go back and research that, Director Kim, and be able to bring that back for a.
We don't know. We can still deliver service though right now.
Oh,
Yes,
absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. This is all looking forward. Uptime is 99.99%. We're delivering water. So this is looking.
What is the timing to get these things done to continue that performance?
Do we have to go with that on?
Well, I don't know that
Yeah.
I can answer that
I don't
right
think-
now.
I don't think, I don't think, I don't
We
think we
don't.
can answer that.
I mean,
Yeah.
we're looking at 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. What is the timing? How urgent?
I think we really need to look at that. I don't want to throw out a number.
It kind of feels urgent. I mean, it's just from the words you guys are using, but maybe I'm misinterpreting that.
I think that was the message that I intended to put forward.
Well, you did. I mean,
Yeah.
when you use things like life and threat to environment to that level, that indicates it needs to be done within the next 6 months.
That would
If
be
we're
ideal.
surprised, the state's gonna be surprised, and I don't think they're gonna be very kind about it. Well, anyway, more research needs to be done, but it sounds like there's more questions than answers right now, so maybe next time.
I think we're gonna have to have an update next time. So thank you, Director Kim. I'm gonna ask the team.
Sure. Can I ask a
to-
question?
Yes.
Just
Well,
to get
wait, hold
clarification.
on, sorry, Director Suji. I just want to finish this thought before I forget. We're gonna ask the team to at least look at the question that Director Kim has raised in terms of our ability to provide services, and then to really take a look at, given the way that was presented and the way it has landed, there's a strong sense of urgency, much more than we have time. So I'd like to ask for the team to be able to provide some additional clarity at the next meeting regarding that versus us continue, going round and round asking questions when you may not have those answers. So I just want to put that on for the next agenda, please. Director
Sure.
Suji.
Yes, I wanted to ask about the old pipelines from Ocean Farms that's out there that I understand poses a risk to health and safety and the environment. I mean, that problem, I guess, was around for a while. I mean, exactly, and it sounded, Laurence, that like NELHA staff had funding to do some master plan for figuring out how to remove it, survey it, remove it, etc. But it still does not have the survey done yet or a cost estimate for the removal. Is that right?
That's not true. No. So we received the funding and we immediately went out and secured the survey services. That was completed. The design for the removal is all but complete. Basically, the plans themselves are complete.
Is there a cost estimate? Is there a cost estimate?
Yes, but I held that back just simply because I didn't want to jeopardize the procurement process by publicly announcing the engineer's estimate for that.
Well, let me ask you, no, you don't have the funding to do the removal. You'd have to go to the ledge to get the funding, right? So you'd have to ask the ledge for X amount of dollars.
That's true.
Which ultimately, if you have a cost estimate in the back, if in case there's questions, you can provide that. So it sounds as though you might be ready to ask for a CIP this year.
For that project, yes.
There is also a decision to make on several options were provided, and so we need to make that decision before the final.
But it sounds like you have enough to ask for funding this legislative session. So by the time.
Yes, we do. Yeah, the plan was to go to the legislature this September, and we're ready for that. We have.
So you will be going through and asking you're putting in your CIP request through DBED, hopefully through the governance package. Is that right?
No.
No. You see, that fell by the wayside with Greg's departure.
Oh, okay. So you intend to ask for CIP funding outside of the governance package?
Not at this point. As I stated before, we're taking stock of all of the items. So what happens is that we typically would not get more than 5 million a year in CIP. So where would we put that CIP? Do we, on the many things that have priority here, whether it's addressing water quality issues, whether it's addressing the onshore deferred maintenance, or whether it's addressing some of the issues that Alex brought up offshore. We really need to prioritize and get the funding for what it's needed the most urgently. And we have not done that work yet. And therefore, I am not personally comfortable going to the legislature and asking for 5 million to remove these pipes when there are many other urgent issues that affect the businesses here. So we haven't done that analysis, and we're not ready yet to go to the legislature. I hope that answers the question.
The number that Laurence put out there, 5 million, is not actually the engineer's estimate. That's low.
So I'd like to clarify, so we have a process moving forward. I'd like to ask the team, given the big picture of what we need to do, I understand we're looking for an ED, but we're also getting pretty dire infrastructure reports that indicate a sense of urgency that is way higher than the time or the resources that we currently have. So I'd like to ask if it's possible for the team to take a look at what the needs are, right, and assess and give us an idea if you had to prioritize. I'd also ask that we not look at what we typically can get in a CIP given past experience, but look at what is needed. Because I think that's two different approaches, right? I fully understand the practice of saying, well, this is the max we get and we're going to have to choose. Yes, we ought to prioritize, but I think it would be helpful for the board to understand not a be all end all, everything we need, but a critically important, like if you're briefing us that unless you remove these pipes, it's a threat to life, that's something that needs to be prioritized, right? If it's, so for those types of things, what, an idea of how much and what the timeline is, and to Director Kim's question in terms of, how are we managing that risk and what are we doing, right? Because that I think is going to begin to help us to get our heads around the situation, which is new for me. I'm a newer member, but I wasn't aware of this. And then two, to Director Miyashiro's point, we as board members are going to have to figure out how do we, are we going to have to put a committee together? Like, what do we need to do? And I would
Chair, I think we need a full list of CIP asks, right? Not the nice to have, but the critical CIP requests to maintain the infrastructure. Because I feel like over the last 3 meetings, we've had 3 separate meetings in 3 separate areas of different funding or funding requirements we'll need, right? I think it's critically important that we all know what the number is, and the number might not be it's dire, it has to go now, but if it's something that has to be done in the near term, and near term I look at like 1 to 3 years, it's just a matter of time before those CIP requests will have to be made. And I think the first step is to get our arms around what's actually outstanding. And then of course priority, because we do know we will have to source this, but I would like to see everything, right? Just because in reviewing board materials, I don't think it's a number that's been presented.
We'll put something like that together for the next board meeting.
I think that would be very helpful, because you're presenting a lot of information over the last meetings, especially for me as a newbie as well, but now it'd be very important to see this as a big picture with your opinion of what you think where the funding should go first, second, third, fourth. It may not have anything to do with the conversation we had today. It may have something to do with this conversation we had in the last board meeting. But I think it would behoove us to hear from you. Here it is. It's $100 million. I'm just making up the number, but these are the things that we need to start tackling first, second, third, fourth. Maybe some can run concurrently. And then we can do whatever we can to help you get what resources you need to get it done.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions from other board members? Mark, Director Glick?
Thank you. It's just a general question to, I guess, get a clear idea on everything that's just been presented. Has there ever been an engineering analysis that has looked at a kind of a long-term timeline or life expectancy of the overall piping system? I mean, it basically says there's 10 years left, there's 20 years left, there's 30 years left. You know, you talked about the infrastructure that's stabilizing it and all that, but I mean, is that ever been done as a single recent analysis? Just curious.
No, it has not.
Actually, can I answer that?
Okay, go.
Sorry. Actually, yes. So every time we've gone in the past, we've gone for a full inspection of the pipelines. We've asked for an engineering analysis of the expected life expectancy of the pipelines. And it's important for me to point that although, you know, there are some dire needs, obviously, especially the Ocean Farms pipelines and the Tahoe pipeline systems, the remaining pipelines, so the north and south pumping distribution systems are currently stable. And the engineering reports that we received back in 2016 said that there was no reason that they should not continue to be operational for at least another 20 or 30 years, assuming that we stay up on the maintenance, which from what I can see from those reports, principally means at present what we know needs to happen is replacing of the zinc sacrificial anodes on certain sections, especially the shallow sections of those pipelines. That's something that is doable. I have no idea how much it will cost because that's not my area of expertise. I've never done that before, but it is doable. And if we do it, there's every reason to expect that those pipelines will continue to function and operate effectively for the next 20 or 30 years.
But perhaps not a comprehensive for the entire system, both onshore, offshore, and all of the various components. So that has not, if that's what you were asking about, that has not been done recently. So there was a life expectancy initially when the pipelines were installed. We've far exceeded those. At each inspection, there is another estimate of further life expectancy, but they're all one-off. It's not a comprehensive, report, if that's what you were asking.
Well, both the answers, Alex's and yours, were extremely helpful, and actually, I think, was the broader question I was asking. And I sort of expected Alex's answer, which is positive. I mean, basically, it puts into context the viability of the system itself. I think it would be a good idea to have that comprehensive analysis, within reason. It doesn't have to be, so drilled down that it, it's overly overly expensive. But I think providing the context in which you have essentially a sense that you have a 20 to 30 year system gives you a better sense of how much you want to spend on supporting infrastructure. So good news that at least on the spot assessments, there seems to be a pretty strong indication that you've got a fairly longer term system there, which is good news. Thank you.
Chair.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask about the Tahoe pipelines, the ones that NELHA installed and operated. Have those been retired from service? They're not used anymore? And you just use them in the north and south? Or
that is correct. We haven't used the Tahoe pipelines for
probably 3 years.
3 years.
Okay. So pretty much everything you're talking about today are disused and or abandoned pipes.
Correct.
That pose a breakaway hazard of navigation safety type hazard,
That is,
right?
that is correct, huh?
Okay. I wanted to, yeah, I'm glad you clarified that because I wasn't really sure if the Kau pipelines were still part of the plumbing, so to speak, and were relied on in any operational sense. So that's good news too. I wanted to get that clear. Thanks.
Okay, before we move on to the executive director's report, do any other directors have any comments about this item?
I do.
Okay.
So in the last 3 meetings, I feel like it's been a little tough and there's been a lot of discovery. One was the contamination. Last meeting was the nearshore, now it's offshore. Are there any other areas of concern or that there will be a substantial update? Or does this cover it?
I think this pretty much covers all of our important areas. Our buildings need maintenance, but that's less critical. I would say these are really the important issues that the board has now been briefed on. And I think in all of them, you've seen that we are putting a lot of work into addressing the issues, whether they're things we can address immediately or whether they're planning activities that we are doing to address in the future.
Thank you.
Question is, given the scope of these things, is there a way to get folks from DOBOR, DLNR, potentially NOAA, to all kind of sit in the same room along with NELHA to try to work these out on a bigger level than just ourselves? These big removal projects, is that a possibility? Given what Director Suji answered to me earlier, I see this maybe approachable from many different points of a star.
Worth exploring for sure.
No.
No, worth exploring.
We're definitely willing to explore.
We'd be happy to get as much help as we can possibly get.
Yes.
Okay. With that, we're going to move on to the executive director's report. Laurence, could you please present?
Sure, thank you. And I don't think Wayne ever joined in.
I got in touch with his assistant and it appears it's not on his schedule.
Okay. Thanks, checking in. All right, so typically Greg would provide a graph, which is a summary of all of our goals and projects. This has been updated and we can kind of go through that if there are additional questions, but I thought I would provide some highlights first, and we'll be happy to answer questions in other areas. So in the summer, the staff here is 17 people, but in the summer we had 5 open vacancies, and that has been brought down to 3. We've hired on an electrician in August, and then in September we hired that was Dan Randall, and then in September we hired account clerk Sherry Ortiz. So we're down to 3 open positions at this point. Now we're still short-staffed, but we're making progress. We have an ad out for a janitor position, and that's pretty much in progress. Should be able to bring that person on somewhat soon. And we have another electrician that we need to recruit for, and that still needs some approval on the DBED side. And of course, the big one, the executive director position, I believe we're on track for that. The PIG is in the process of reviewing resume and ought to be meeting. I think next week is the first meeting for the PIG. So that's a position vacancies. On the special contracts and special projects, we mentioned a little earlier the offshore RFP. It's actually an IFB, my mistake. So that solicitation has been published. A pre-proposal or pre-bid meeting has taken place. We should be getting responses 10 days from now. And we will know what the cost associated with the removal of that KAU pipeline is. On the EIS master plan, we've been meeting weekly with the master planners, HHF planners, and they're planning for a site visit next week. There ought to be the first community meeting, I think, later in the year. And I think by March of next year, they are planning to have some concepts that we would be able to bring to the board to discuss and get input on. We've entered into a contract for marketing phase 2. These are federal funds, and so this very little cost to NELHA. We're finishing up on this EDA grant, and these phase 2 contract has specifically in it deliverables that have to do with research on the cultural background of the place, as well as historical timeline to produce brochures and other marketing materials to further market the place and hopefully arrive at full development at some point. Finally, on this contract and special project, we've been working with Terry Searles with Hawaii Natural Energy Institute, and what he's been doing for us is reviewing distributed energy resources project or report that had been made in 2013, which was giving direction to NELHA as far as the type of energy activities that it could do. And that review will sort of take stock of what has done to date and provide recommendations to support the Hawaii 2045 energy goals. So this report will be an HNEI report funded by HNEI. And these goals or recommendations to help assist with meeting 2048 clean energy goals. These recommendations will help inform the master plan, and we're hoping to bring Terry Searles to the next November meeting for him to present some of that work. He's currently been interviewing stakeholders and policymakers and members of the board and others. On the seawater system, an update there, we do have a solicitation that just closed for the Gould's pump that came in at $450,000 or close to that, $430,000 for pumps. And we need to evaluate the material that was presented to us and award. The seawater quality, I have an update for that. That is one of the big 3 challenge areas that we had discussed at board level perhaps a couple of months ago. And so there's been a fair amount of activity on our end to address that. We've had 2 full meetings with the larval group. There have been different attendees, but overall every company that has interest in the matter has had some representation and is on a general email list that we communicate actively with. Also on that list is Jim Wyban, the consultant who produced that water quality report, as well as Dr. Brodsky from the Department of Ag. We've had many consultations with subject matter experts as well as individual clients in addition to these 2 broader meetings. Jim Wyban's report has been posted on the website, and the main feedback there is that folks are interested in an assessment of the financial impact to the businesses that do larval rearing. This was not in the scope for the consultant, and so has not been produced by Jim Wyban, and NELHA would really have to go out to bid to get this work, as it'd be preferable to have some experts to do this. So in July, the larval group and NELHA staff had agreed to place resources into developing a production well for seawater in the research campus. To provide an alternative to the NELHA seawater system and also to provide a template so that other companies could build their own well. Unfortunately, we ran into some snags, both on the permitting side as well as on the funding side. The biggest snag I would say would be on the permitting side. It seems like an EA or an EIS would be needed for a production well to be built. We continue to work on the funding side, perhaps to look at a broader R&D type of project that would be led by Jim Wyban and various other companies here that have interest. So what we ended up deciding as a result of the well solution not really being an immediate solution, staff ended up starting an analysis of all the recommendations that were provided by Jim Wyban. And we presented that to the Larval Group in September 26. And then we emailed, it's a working document, 5 or 6 pages, and we emailed that to the group for feedback. And out of that, we really looked at those recommendations or those activities that we could do that have a good chance of success, that have the ability to implement soon, and that have a low cost given our budget situation. And so we came up with 3 sort of priority areas. One was implementing testing, chemical bacteria vibrio. Another one was implementing a high volume flushing. We think we can do that with a couple of handful of businesses at this point, and looking at additional ways to, the more businesses we have involved in this flushing, the higher the volume we can use and the better job it's going to do to clean out the pipes. So we continue to work in getting the buy-in of as many people to help participate in this. And then finally, development inspection ports in the pipeline system. So we're actively working on these priority areas in addition to the R&D to do further experimentation to try to figure out the source of the water quality and what solutions there might be, like ozonation, et cetera. So that's a summary on the seawater quality, the activities that we have been doing thus far to address that particular set of problems. Maybe I should pause here, see if there are any questions before I proceed with the next 3 sets of highlights.
Yeah, Lawrence, I have a question.
Yeah.
So I missed that last water quality meeting. So EIS needed for a production well within the research campus. The production well, was that above or below the 26 GPM that we had been talking about?
That was less than 26 GPM, right?
So they want an EIS for less than 26 GPM well.
Any well.
Any well.
Any production well. So
and who wanted the EIS?
Was pointed out by the National Park Service that our current EISs do not discuss the possibility of production wells on land. And that was picked up by Seaworm then, who confirmed that was also the reading.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I just wonder if you didn't designate this as a production well, but as an R&D activity, would that still require an EIS?
Probably, yes. So if we're taking water out of the ground and using it on land, that would be considered production, whatever the use actually is.
And the end goal to be that us tenants each are able to develop our own, which would clearly be for production.
I understand, but
Yeah,
you have to prove it out before anybody else is going to put it in. So
yeah,
that
no,
becomes a
yeah,
research
understood.
activity,
Understood.
not a production
Yeah.
activity.
So right now, obviously with the EIS update that we are currently proceeding with, we're under contract to update the master EIS for the entire coast park. We'll obviously include this in that analysis in that document.
Okay.
That's a 3-year project right now. So it doesn't solve a problem today.
Yeah.
If we wanted to drill a well tomorrow, we'd probably have to do an EA at the least.
Okay. Was there, do you ballpark cost estimate on one of those?
The EA,
Yes,
probably about $30,000.
30.
Okay, so maybe I'll proceed if there are no more questions. So the 50th anniversary open house event that's taking place this Saturday, obviously taking up a lot of our time. And so that all-consuming activity will end after Saturday, but we will have done a community outreach. It's a free event. There are 26 partners and clients that are participating that are going to help with educating the community on the projects that are here. And, you know, mahalo to Ray, who's been pulling away to put this together. She's done an amazing amount of work. We initially went out for an RFP and the budget was just too much. So we ended up consolidating the event and doing everything in-house on a shoestring budget, as we do many things here. So it's going to be a really exciting event. Those of you who are on the Big Island, we hope that you can come and participate. And there's on the website, you can find it's on our front page. You can find a link to the map showing the various locations of the various items. It's done in conjunction with an art summit, and that's put on by the Hawaii Keiki Museum. And we think it's going to be a really exciting event. So please do come. Leasing activities. So we still are doing, have a few leasing activities. Since we last met, Captura lease has been executed and they are moving very fast. They're started their construction and their modifications that are going to be necessary for them to showcase and demonstrate their 1 kiloton carbon capture system. They will be present at the 50th. So anybody who wants to learn about capture and you know what they think they're going to do for climate, that technology can do for the climate, that'll be helpful for them to showcase at that event. Another sort of significant leasing activity is the Sea Dragon project, which this board gave approval and concept to, I want to say about a year ago. This is the seawater to jet fuel project. The EA it's in the process of completing the EA. It's out on the street now. Public comment period is taking place as we speak. I think that ends later this month.
2 weeks.
2 weeks from now. So once that is completed, most likely they would come to the board with a final plan and for a final approval. I would expect that at the November board meeting. So other than that, we've opened up a lease or executed a lease with Namaka Algae, which is one of the Hatch incubator programs. And so that is the principal, and that is Valerie Harmon, who has been at the park for quite a number of years of years now. And other than that, we're having to delay reviews of new proposals that are coming in. Again, we're short-staffed. We can do everything, but we can't do everything all at once. And that's where we're at. I did want to give, a big mahalo and shout out to the county and Hawaii Police Department. On top of everything that's going on, we've had some concerns and issues with homeless camp setting up both at the beach and at the Kahilihili up top. We've had a series of break-ins, a series of people cutting gates, putting their locks on. So just a variety of issues that have sort of all come together. And the Hawaii Police Department, we're working very closely with them, and I cannot thank them enough for the help that they've been giving us on that. So, thank you, Director Doug Adams, and to the county for helping facilitate that work. And so we've implemented now a trespassing notice mechanism, and also a method to put bans on the fishing permits, which somehow have been abused, and specifically in the last couple of weeks. So these are the highlights.
So,
I'm sorry. Yes.
so there are no more night fishing permits?
Oh, no, we continue the night fishing permits, but there are people who are abusing the system, who are getting a night fishing permit in order to camp.
Oh, so you're keeping a list of those folks?
Where,
Got it.
yes,
Okay.
yes. And if you're not there fishing and if you're camping instead, apparently that seems to be the narrative in the community, that you just ask for a fishing permit and then you can camp. And that has led to encampments that are forming. And that's a problem, a security problem for all of the businesses that are here.
Question, you have, is there a need for security cameras or anything like that in particular areas that would help?
That would be very helpful, for sure. We do have some security cameras up at the Malka Research Campus. We have a camera down here. There were some issues with that.
If I could solicit a donation, is that appropriate? To provide cameras and install them at the locations you request? Or do I have to go through a million hoops?
This is a state. Let me get back to you.
Can you get back to me?
Yes, absolutely.
It might be something that some people that I can reach out to, manufacturers in particular, who we deal with, who might be willing to provide a demonstration of something that you can use.
Okay, yeah, we'd be interested in looking at the opportunities. Okay. Okay, so I think that was pretty much the highlights. I'm happy to go. It doesn't mean we haven't been working in all the other areas as well. So if anyone has any specific questions in any of the other areas that you used to seeing at every board meeting, I'm happy to answer that as well.
Any discussion, any questions, board members? Okay, hearing none, we have announcements. With respect to the next Board of Directors meeting, it'll be held on Tuesday, November 19th at 10 a.m. And then as a reminder, we have the NELHA 50th anniversary open house this Saturday from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. And I believe we are in the process of scheduling the PIG meeting, permitted interaction group meeting, to review the application submitted for the executive director position. Any other question?
If I could plug the 50th thing again, we have 200 dozen oysters to get through, so please come and eat oysters.
Yum, thank you. Okay, with that, we're gonna adjourn the board meeting at 11:33 a.m. Hawaii Standard Time. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
There. And director.